Planning deregulation is often presented as a panacea. It's something that will increase our housing supply and allow us as individuals to extract more value from our private property. From the government's red tape challenge to the NPPF's streamlining of planning regulation, the answer appears to be, let the market decide. But is the market always the best arbiter for collective public values? Is planning deregulation necessarily the answer? In this short film, we discuss two case studies from the perspective of the local London borough. These are permitted development rights, allowing office to residential conversion, and the new partial deregulation around short-term letting in London.
Is planning deregulation the answer? I would say categorically no. And it's categorically no for several reasons. First, housing supply is not just about numbers, obviously we all know that. It's also about what kind of housing and for whom. People need to be able to afford to rent or buy the housing that's being built. And deregulation prevents you from doing that, from securing right type of supply. Ultimately, what we've seen with some of the recent deregulation, like office residential permitted development rights, it increases the land values. That's all it does. It increases the land values. It doesn't necessarily lead to increase in supply. What the government has done with the deregulation is made it much easier for land to become housing land. So we will increase housing land, the amount of housing land and planning permissions perhaps, but whether that gets translated into delivery is a whole other matter.
I think another way of looking at this would be to say, what is it we're deregulating? In the current debate, we're very concerned about the housing crisis, not just London, but the wider southeast. And that there's a bigger issue here about the long-term quality of housing in the UK. We need to also run alongside the housing crisis, the longer-term effects of restricting housing or land supply, which is that we've gradually squeezed the quality of the housing that we're getting.
I completely agree. I'm worried about deregulation being seen as being a strong instrument for policy by central government or developers as a mechanism to boost housing land and numbers. I think deregulation that doesn't support those planning qualities around quality and tenure is not a good idea. The deregulation around offices to residential and the deregulation of the kind of housing market and applying an Uber idea to private rental market is disastrous.
All the government does, and not just this one, the previous ones, is these policies that are one size fits all. And you're dealing with extremely different circumstances. Even in London itself, if we had a national plan, no matter how weak or flimsy it might be, then you might have some of these things addressed on that regional level. So some things might be acceptable in the Midlands, so people can share in prosperity and maybe have short-term lets or whatever, but not in central London or not in London.
If you allow the market to run rampant through deregulation and you get huge concentrations of investment in single uses and types, as we're starting to feel in London, and you don't plan for a balanced economy and a balanced place across the country, we're just left with these problems. Red tape challenge, brilliant. Bring it on. Let's simplify the planning process. Let's simplify planning policy process. Let's get planners working on, good, sensible, new, different ways of providing homes. But, just deregulation as the answer to more homes, better sustainable towns and cities doesn't work.
If you're not involved in the decision making anymore, as in with, say, office residential permitted development rights, you've no role other than just do the prior approval and that's it. So you can't control the size, the quality, tenure, or any of those things. So effectively, it's completely outside the planning system when that happens, of any principles that we have.
For me, the office to resi, the two big problems with that is our losing our ability to manage the balance between employment land and housing land, and the loss of affordable. Unless we build something like 500,000 homes a year, house price stability will not arrive in this country. We will never build more than about 200,000 or 300,000 if we're lucky. So the loss of affordable the ability of planning departments to require some affordable homes in change of use from office to resi is criminal.
What we have seen is some of the smaller conversions where there was a relatively small amount of floor space going to residential under permitted development, right? Some of them are quite spacious and they are they're luxury flats for being sold for 1.5 million or 2 million or whatever. Say decent 2 or 3 bedroom flats, but a lot of them where it's, say, a large office being converted to flats, they're tiny. They're mainly 1 bedroom, lots of studios, which we normally don't allow under policy. And then from the provision of employment floor space perspective, I mean, it's absolute madness. In the areas where, such as central London, where you need most offices, you actually are in greatest danger to lose offices to residential because of the residential values. We have seen in a very short space of time when the office to resi PD rights came in May 13. In the first year to 18 months, most of them went. And it's in total something like 54,000 square meters of office floor space. That's an awful lot. And we've estimated that about a half of that was actually occupied. So we now have net loss of office floor space, even though our needs in terms of planning for the future are massive.
And indeed, City of London has recently produced a research report saying how important low value, low rent business accommodation is for them to be able to bring forward company innovation and the next wave of businesses who are going to make London great. Can you believe it that we're actually going to have to manufacture and create those spaces now?
If you just let the market do what it does, what will happen to the office market? Given the values that people can get if they converted offices to residential, I mean, it's just, it's madness. It's just about market knows best, let the market do it.
The idea that there's the free market on the one side and then there's spoil sports on the other, the planners. Planners have in the past maybe acted as spoil sports and have been unreasonably restrictive or unimaginative in their outlook. When Airbnb, it seems to me, lobbied hard to the government for the sharing economy, the ear of the government was taken because they were open to the argument that Airbnb type operations, not just that company, but the whole of the sharing economy was a free market, good thing, and that this old 1973 fusty, dusty regulation was the spoil sport side of the pitch, and it was a good thing to sweep it away. If it was entirely the free market, nearly every flat in the Edgware Road area would be a hotel, and there would be no, or virtually no, social fabric in terms of laundrettes, petrol stations perhaps.
If it is, and it appears to be in many cases, longer than 90 days, it appears to be more, this is what this property is being used throughout the year. We have a decrease in housing stock. At the time where there's a massive housing crisis. The other worries, in terms of the new built housing, when you go and try and book one of these things, the value per day, there's no way that longer term renting can compete with that. It's double, if not more. So we are setting ourselves up to not only lose the existing housing stock, but also lose some of the supply of the new that we will be delivering, because people will now know they can do this and invest with that purpose in mind.
We understand what the new regulations are, but they are much more challenging to enforce, and they go nowhere near what it said on the tin. It said on the tin that it would mean that the hard-working family could rent their house out when they went on holiday without tangling with red tape. Well, they never came on our radar in the first place. That wasn't a problem. The focus for short-term letting in Westminster tends to be on established mansion blocks of flats in certain areas, the Edgware Road, the Marble Arch area, certain key areas.
So just to be devil's advocate for a minute, so does that mean that you haven't seen an increase in those particular areas? Because that would then be an argument in favour of what government has done in terms of deregulation.
My sense is it's the same properties, but they've now been given effectively carte blanche.
There's no concentration as such in Islington, but you can just see them everywhere, peppered around, and there's been quite a lot of increase since the deregulation.
Jenny, do you have any comments on that?
I would say it's probably the larger businesses now can do it, because it's harder for them to get caught.
One of the problems that we have in central London is the balance between homes and residential amenity and values. Maybe what we want are areas that are in fact more zones.
If you decided rationally that you would allow central London to go over to short-term letting, the argument would be from local councillors, for example, who are you left with as stakeholders interested in the quality of the local environment?
You want permanent residential communities in Westminster as well, and not them to be forced out because of the noise and people coming in the middle of the night, etc. But the other thing is, we have no control either way. Anybody can do it. So anybody who wants to do it and wants to make profit out of it throughout can do it.
There was a big lobbying exercise to say all we need to make this work is a light touch system whereby people announce, keep a record in a very simple way of the actual lettings when they are taking place. There was absolutely nothing, so the government didn't agree to any of that. The cause isn't hopeless, and there are tools we can use, and we continue to seek to contain the problem. But no one's pretending that the government has made the job reasonably manageable. We have to be very sharp in how we work.
Somehow it's only the planning world that's being looked at for solutions where in fact the solutions are much, much larger. I mean, I personally wouldn't be against a different use class for short-term lets, but then you then know what you're granting, you know whether it's in the right place, you can control it in the right way, and then the rest of the existing housing stock or new conventional normal housing stock is then what it should be. Whereas now there are no boundaries.
It's the wrong balance. It's the wrong area where we're putting deregulation. As a result of deregulations, we're having this perverse skewing in our city where you only have very, very high level or absolutely poor, impossible to develop land.
Who plans with what ends and means for which interest groups? I think that's a very good question to ask when you're looking whether it's a local issue like short-term letting in Westminster or the wider issues we've been discussing.
If we are to have some more sensible planning for London, I think we have to give the powers to the mayor. Some of the powers that have been taken. So basically the powers have been taken from local authorities and it's gone. Let's just return some of it at least to the regional level, and then we can work together to hopefully have some sensible planning and deliver housing and everything else for London. That would be my view.